If you've ever made yourself a beautiful pendant that you loved, but found it really annoying that it has a tendency to flip around to the backside, today I have a solution for you. We are going to make a pendant in one simple baking step that is reversible, using supplies from the Ethnic Patterns CreateAlong Box. Hi there, Sandy Huntress here. So the first thing you need to do is choose a clay color. I have here a mixture of blues and greens. I didn't mix it entirely. I left it a little streaky and mottled. Whatever colors make you happy is fine. And I've rolled this out on the thickest setting of my pasta machine, which is about 2.5 millimeters thick. For this, you will need a 1 3/4 inch round circle cutter. Yeah, round circle, right? And you need to cut 2 pieces from this. And since it's a circle, you can give it a twist, and that will help eliminate that mark from the seam if your if your cutter has a seam. So just cut 2 of those. Set one of them aside for the moment. If you have one that you prefer to be the front, set that one aside because we're going to start by working on the back. We're going to use this Celtic pattern stamp deco disc that came in the Ethnic Patterns CreateAlong Box. It has a really nice deep texture, but we don't want our clay to get stuck in there. So I'm going to spray just a drop of Armor All on the clay. I've gotten questions about this. No, I have never had an issue with this after baking. We don't need that much, really. All you need is a thin layer, so just a tiny drop, the smallest amount you can get out, and spread it really thin. Now this deco disc has a 1 3/4 inch pattern on it, so just center your circle cutout right on that pattern with the Armor All side down, and start pressing from the center out with your fingers. This is a pretty deep pattern compared to many of the other deco discs, so press nice and firmly so you get a really good impression. Once you've pressed all around, get your circle cutter again and center that in there. You may need to look at it from several angles. Get it as centered as you possibly can because this will make our finished pendant better. The designs will be centered in relation to each other on both sides. And we'll just clean that up a little. Leave that in the stamp right for now. And it'll be a little ragged at the moment, especially I think my clay had some opal mylar flakes in there from opal clay, and so it's going to be a little ragged. It's okay. Next, take your other circle, and because we just cut this, we should be able to get this on here lined up perfectly. And if you want a different thickness, you can certainly roll your sheets thinner, or you can add another one in there if you want it thicker. I think this about 5 millimeters thick is a good thickness. Next, we are going to use this wooden bezel that also came in the Ethnic Patterns box. Not as part of the piece of jewelry, we are going to use it as a texture plate and a stencil. And again, you need a little bit of release. You don't want this to stick to your clay. So just a couple drops, that's plenty, really. Yep. Spread it so you have a thin coat all over. And then place this on, and I made sure to line this up in relation to my pattern that's on the back. So you wouldn't want it cockeyed, you want it so that it would be straight, whichever way it's hanging. So either this or this. Get that centered on your circle, and it's just about the same size as our 1 3/4 inch cutter. So you should be able to get it centered in there, on there, and then start pressing. And you're going to press until you notice these little squares, especially you'll be able to see it, start to look a little puffy. They're puffing up, they're raising up because you're displacing the clay in these lines around them. So just press that on there nice and firmly. Now comes the part where we're going to use this as a stencil. So when we lift this off, we'll have the texture from this design. I'm going to use the color fuse that came in the Ethnic Patterns box, the green. And I have just a little sculpting tool here. It's a small paddle that I'm going to use. I'm going to avoid the white bits as much as I can. I don't have to avoid them entirely. I'll show you why in a minute. And I'm going to add those to, well, whatever areas I want. In this case, the areas I want are these little square cutouts. And I'm not trying to get a texture here with my tool. I just want to press those powders into those areas. Once those are all filled, I'm going to hold this over a trash can and give it a good thwack from the bottom. So I'm going to flip it upside down over a trash can and thwack it to remove the excess color fuse out of those areas. So I just have whatever is sticking to the polymer clay and no excess. I have plans for these diamond-shaped areas, but for the outer little triangles, I am going to add some of this glitter powder in the same way. I have a smaller end for my sculpting tool that will work perfectly. And I'm not going to worry about it getting on these little diamonds, but try to just confine it to those areas. And so you can fill these areas in with whatever powders and pigments that you want. Because these areas are so tiny, it was hard to get in there and make sure they were filled completely. So I'm just going to tap it from all sides to kind of smooth out that mica powder so that there's a nice layer of it on the clay in each of those areas. Then I'm going to do the same thing I did with the color fuse, which is to tip it upside down over a trash can and get rid of the excess. Just give it a couple taps. And there. The next step is to remove the texture plate from the back. You should be able to just gently peel it off. Okay, now that came off first instead, and that's okay. But I do want to just lightly peel it off. So there's our back. And we can highlight that great deep texture with some mica powder. This is a nice rich gold from CreateAlong. So what you do, the way you do this is you tap your finger and then tap your finger off. See that excess, if you weren't to tap it off, it would go down into the crevices of your design and you wouldn't have such a clean design. So remember, tap it in the powder, tap it off. And then you can rub it over the top of your design. And that can be the back of your pendant, which is quite beautiful. And you don't have to mind if your pendant flips around while you're wearing it. Next, we'll do a little bit more work on the front. Another product that came in the Ethnic Patterns box are these triangle hot fix cabochons. And I loved that you got a couple different shapes. You got mostly triangles, but you also got these little diamond shapes, which are exactly the same shape and size as the diamonds in this pattern. So I am going to place those on this design in those spots. Now, because of the way we pressed down with this wooden piece and made the clay in the designs raise up a little, I'm going to come in with my sculpting tool and just gently press those down. You'll see why when you do it. You probably can't see it well on camera, but when you do it, those little humps kind of make it difficult to get those rhinestones seated properly. So I'm just going to ever so lightly tap those down. And here I have a rhinestone pickup tool. And now I can just pick those up and press them in place. So there, I'll have to go back and maybe nudge some of those into more proper position, but you get the idea. These are hot fix crystals, by the way. You can tell by the little kind of grid on the back, that is the glue. So when these go into the oven, the heat of the oven will activate these rhinestones, and then they will be stuck permanently to your polymer clay. Now, a couple tips for you on this. First of all, I really suggest that you do some testing with this design, testing out colors and different choices that you make. Like this is the first one I made, and I thought I needed a little bit more contrast, and so that's why I went with this darker blue color. And other things I noticed were the little white granules from the color fuse tended to kind of blob out over when they melted, and I didn't care for that. It looked kind of messy. So when I did these, I tried to make sure not to have too many of the white bits. Also, these are fairly heavy rhinestones, so be careful when you're handling this and bringing it to the oven, because they may fall off pretty easily. I like to use the back of the tool, just the back of the pencil, to kind of press them lightly in place. But they may not stick until after that adhesive is activated in the oven. So just take care with that. So then you bake this for half an hour, 45 minutes. We will be doing one more baking. Now, if you need to, after baking, you may come in with a little bit of sandpaper and just smooth out this outer edge. And then you can add some trim to it. Again, this is something you might want to do some testing on and see what works. I just have here a strip of black clay that I have rolled out on a number 3 setting on my pasta machine, which is about 1.5 millimeters thick. It's really up to your personal taste how thick to make it. Add a little bit of liquid clay to this edge. Like I said, if I was planning on using this for my finished piece, I would definitely do a little sanding here and smooth out this edge more nicely. But I just want to show you how to do this. So make sure you add liquid clay all around that edge. Then we'll line up our strip with one of the edges. I think I'll line it up with this one because due to the nature of this design, I think the back will be easier to trim. I could probably make that a little thinner, be easier to manage. You want it to be a little wider than you need for this edge, but not too much wider or it becomes tough to manage. And you just line it up. Kind of use your finger to smooth that out. And for this 1 3/4 inch circle, about a 6-inch strip will do. Trim that neatly. And take your time. Of course, take more time than I am here, and make this all neat. Then you can come in with a nice sharp blade and trim the excess off the back. Again, I would take more time than this and really make it nice and tidy. But then what you can do to finish it is add some metallic powder, which I think is quite beautiful. And that's a really lovely finish. And there you go. You can use a screw eye for a bail, drill a hole front to back, whatever you need, but you have a pendant that is beautifully finished on front and back. So it doesn't matter if it flips around. Maybe you even want it to. Once again, this is Sandy Huntress for CreateAlong, wishing you happy creating.